Alrighty. Figured I'd do one here this week that's going to be much shorter than it was last week. Obviously, we did not play on Championship Sunday, so I'll give you my tidbit on that day. A couple other stuff around the league. Obviously, getting to our team as well. Some news and notes from a coaching standpoint. And we are in the middle of Senior Bowl week here this week, which is always a fun time. I've always enjoyed Senior Bowl week, both when we were not a competing football team and since we've been a competing football team. Always a good week. I'm going to get to first just the games from Sunday. So, how should I say this and start it? I respect Lamar Jackson as a competitor. I think he is a good human being. That being said, he is the most overrated quarterback of this generation. Hands down. That includes Dak Prescott. That includes, if you want to say like Russell Wilson, especially lately, but he had tremendous success. Has a championship, the whole thing. That includes, well, really anybody you want to include, because I feel as if the way that he is talked about compared to what reality is, he is an extremely overrated football player. He is mentioned among the best quarterbacks. I think because perception says, well, look at everything he can do on a football field. Again, good competitor. Seems like a good dude. I know the whole thing last year about, free agent and representing himself, and I thought that was stupid of him. But hey, good on you. You got the contract. The fact that this notion that nobody does more with less than Lamar Jackson is a crock of fucking bullshit. The Baltimore Ravens, notoriously, since their inception, since they've been back in Baltimore, have always been a phenomenal drafting football team. It's been a destination for free agents. And this theory, this idea that because they didn't draft a number one receiver or a receiver in the first round and added weapons with Lamar and all this hogwash, is just completely false. Baltimore, year in and year out, has been a competitive football team, has been a playoff caliber football team. Obviously, they were the 1 seed this year. They've been the 1 seed in years past. They've won championships, right? So, this idea that Lamar, without Lamar, you might as well just go back to hell. It's ridiculous. It's absurd, the language that people use and talk about this guy and what he means. I'm not sitting here saying that he's not a franchise-altering quarterback to an extent. Sure he is. And I'm sure that there's probably 29 other teams, maybe not 29, 25, just because I'm picking a random number, other teams that would gladly take Lamar Jackson as their franchise quarterback and be their quarterback for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Sure. Absolutely. But at some point, the lack of playoff production has to be what matters most, because that's where guys are judged, right? That's where guys are judged. So, yeah, sure, my guy hasn't won a championship yet. And he's been to an AFC title game just like Lamar has. Lost to the same team on the road. Lamar was at home. But Lamar, the playoff performances, this stat, I should have had this up in front of me. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can find this. Sorry, dead air here. Here we go. This stat. NFL postseasons. Who said this? Scott Kaxmar. If I said his name correctly. Maybe a bunch of you have seen this. NFL postseasons were the quarterback-led team to fewest points scored in that particular season happened in the playoff game. Lamar Jackson has been in the playoff 4 times in his career. And every single time, he has scored the least amount of points from an offensive standpoint in all 4 years. 2018, 2019, 2020, I thank you, 2023. 100% of the time, every single time he gets into the playoffs, you are guaranteed to score the least amount of points that you've scored all year. John Elway's number 2 at 33%. He did it 3 times. Joe Flacco, twice. Phillip Rivers, twice. Steve Young, twice. Cam Newton, once. Tom Brady, 5 times. Granted, it was over the course of a 20 season, or 20 attempts, the 20 postseasons. Josh, 1 time last year, Cincinnati. Matt Stafford, Kurt Warner, Dan Marino twice. Peyton Manning 3 times. Again, 15 playoff appearances. 4 playoff appearances for Lamar. 4 times the offense, led by him, has scored the least amount of points all season long. That is why before 2 weekends ago, going into the divisional round, I had no ounce of horror if we were to have beaten Kansas City of going into Baltimore and beating Baltimore. Because I know when push comes to shove, my quarterback shows up like 95% of the time. The only game that he didn't show up against, and really the offense as a whole didn't, quarterback driven, I get it, was against Cincinnati last year. All things considered. Banged up. Everything that happened last year. At some point, right? Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. It's a fucking duck. And Lamar Jackson is now a football player, a quarterback, that in my eyes, until he shows me differently, I'm going to base my judgment off of what he's shown me already. And that is a quarterback that can't get it done in the biggest moments. And sure, the size of those moments, how big they are, increases as you go. I get it. Wild card, divisional round, title game, Super Bowl. Because I know some people are going to sit here and say, well, Josh, like, I'm not sure if everybody saw the Mel Kiper thing from a couple days ago, but if you associate blame with Josh Allen, I'm using Mel Kiper's words, paraphrasing a little bit, you don't know what you're talking about. Josh Allen has done every single thing he possibly can in every playoff game that this team has played in since he's been their quarterback, besides the Cincinnati game, every single time. And I can lay my head down at night, every single night, from now until the start of next year, knowing that I have a quarterback, I have a player that is one of 2, and I'll put Burrow in there because he's beaten Mahomes. But my guy can beat Mahomes. He's beaten Mahomes. He's beaten Mahomes 3 consecutive years in Mahomes' own stadium. Yes, in the regular season. Don't tell me it's not a big game. They're all big games when you play against that team. And vice versa. Yes, he hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs. His team hasn't gotten it done in the playoffs. Because I would argue that Josh has got it done. As an individual, Josh has done everything he possibly can to win the football games that he's played against the Kansas City Chiefs in his career in the postseason. You want to talk about the AFC title game in 2020? Sure. Could he have done more? Maybe. But as everybody agrees, I think we'll say that we were ahead of schedule at that point. And that's fine. It is really nice knowing that I have a one of one, a one of two at most. Because everybody else can't do it. They don't have the ability. They don't. And so we'll see what happens, with, as classes come in over the next couple of years and whatnot, and, how the teams change, how Kansas City changes, how Buffalo changes, what they add, what they lose, who retires, that type of stuff. Obviously, injuries play a huge part of it from a year-to-year basis. But that was my takeaway from Sunday, was I have the guy. And I firmly believe that my guy and his team will have their day. It sucks right now. It does. Believe me, I did not want to watch those games. I actually missed the kickoff of the first one. Was out and about with the family, but so that's where I'm at. I'm at a point with our franchise and our roster that I believe, if addressed correctly, and what are we? 12 minutes, okay. If addressed correctly, can be right back to where we were and beyond. I'll get to that in just a minute. So that's my take on that. Detroit, Kansas City. Detroit, San Francisco. An all-time collapse, obviously. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You've heard it everywhere. Do I feel for Detroit? No. You had your opportunity. Your loaded roster. The majority of your roster was healthy. Actually, I believe really all of your roster was healthy. Starting, 22. And you choked it. You were up 17 points at halftime, and you threw it down the drain. So, do I feel bad for you? No. I don't at all. I appreciate your head coach's ability to be consistent. However, in my opinion, that first kick that he forwent, that's a word, he should have kicked. And it's 24-10. I get it. You're sitting comfortable. You're up 2 touchdowns. Just match what your opponent is doing in that game. Just match them. It's the third quarter. If you go up again by another 3 scores, obviously all the pressure's on San Francisco, but it's even more so. Everything gets a little bit tighter. And who knows, again, how that changes from a play calling standpoint from Shanahan and Purdy. You don't know. Maybe there's an opportunity for more mistake because, they want to push the ball a little bit downfield and score, or, things just change. They don't get that there. I'm thinking San Fran's coming back, especially, the Ayuk play was tremendous. Again, I wish we had those type of receivers that can make those plays. When Gibbs fumbled, with the whistle here. When Gibbs fumbled, game was over. I just sitting there watching it. Game was over. All the momentum was with San Francisco, and when that happens with the talent that team has, at home, Detroit. Now they've been there recently. Detroit never being there. Granted, they've had a quarterback that has moved along in the playoffs and whatnot. But again, I just felt that game was over when Gibbs fumbled that ball, and I like Gibbs a lot. He's a super talented back. I think with obviously the ability to both run and catch, a lot of people criticized them for taking him at 12 when they did. And look, if he's going to be a 16, 17, 1800 all-purpose yard back, to me, that's worth it. When you get that type of production out of any player, it doesn't make a difference what position. They got a great two-headed monster. I'm not sure the contract that Montgomery signed with them, if it was a one-year deal or a multi-year deal, but pardon me, 3 o'clock yawn. A little later today, by the way. Had some things I had to do this morning. So, will Detroit get back there? I appreciate what Campbell said about this might have been our only shot with the roster that we have, and who knows? Detroit's in a spot. Now, granted, the news of yesterday, I shouldn't say Aaron Glenn, but at least Ben Johnson's coming back. Kudos to him. Obviously, he wanted a job that, in my opinion, had already had a franchised 90% developed quarterback. He didn't want to go to a situation where either they didn't have a quarterback or they're in position to draft a quarterback and then have to develop them, and if you don't, you lose your job and all that type of stuff. So, kudos to him. I think, I was just telling a buddy today, I think Ben Johnson is smart if he says, okay, if Kansas City wins it all this year and Reed retires, who knows what they do. I can go there. Or if he comes back another year, then retires. If Buffalo, if we falter and don't get to where we want to go next year and we decide to move on from McDermott, we already not want to coach Josh Allen. I think that's another one. So those jobs, I think, is what he's really maybe, gunning for. Because Washington has the number 2 pick, so they could easily take whatever quarterback that Chicago doesn't take, or if Chicago doesn't take a quarterback and they go with Harrison, then they have their pick of the litter. Whether it's May, Williams, Jaden Daniels, what have you. You want to take Bo Nix at 2, go right ahead. A little shock there. But nevertheless, we'll see what Aaron Glenn does, their D coordinator. I know it just happened today that the D coordinator for Baltimore is now the Seattle Seahawks head coach, so that's a ding for Baltimore. That's good. We like that. So that's my take on that. Detroit had their opportunity. The bandwagon fan, Marshall Matters? What's that man's real name? Marshall Matthews? Who cares? Won't get to see his team in the Super Bowl. Oh, well. Speaking of coordinators, transitioning, this is perfect. 18 here, 18 and a half. We have, obviously, officially named our offensive coordinator, Joe Brady. Like it. I think he was definitely on the short list. And then, obviously, we promoted Bobby Babich Jr. to defensive coordinator. I think, obviously, the biggest question is going to be if McDermott is the play caller, if he relinquishes that responsibility to Babich, which I don't think could necessarily be a bad thing. I think, he'd be a first-time play caller, but at the same time, when your head coach is a play caller and the head coach on that side of and favors that side of the ball from a coaching perspective, can certainly help. So we'll see what they do there. It'd be interesting to see who they bring in now to replace the levels that those guys were at. So quarterback coach originally for Joe Brady, linebacker coach for Babich. If they promote from within, if they bring in some guys from the outside, we'll obviously be in tune with that. Sorry. So happy with that. Babich is one of those guys that listen to him and he gets it. he gets it. He understands not just in X's and O's, but player development and how to bring guys along. And, it's really one of those things that he's a coach that at every level he's coached at or position group he's coached at has gotten better. So I don't think that that's a coincidence as he's gone from, secondary to linebackers and whatnot. And we've seen the play of the guys in those respective rooms get stronger and better. So that's intriguing. That's why you don't want to lose him. Plus, he's 40 years old. Knows our guys. Knows what we want to do from a defensive standpoint. And also, not to mention, too, the teams that were, that inquired. Miami being one of them. I wonder why they inquired. The Giants, obviously, the connection with Daboll and Shane. Green Bay inquired for their DC opportunity. So, excited that they, promoted from within with him. So, what else? What else is there to discuss? What are we, 20 minutes here? I'll maybe do another 10-ish or so. As we get closer to the new league year, which I believe is March 11th. Look at the calendar here. Yeah, that's March 11th is when you can start negotiating contracts, free agents. So as we get closer to that, I'll do a couple of things just based on off season, where we potentially can spend and save and what have yous. From a cap standpoint, I'm going to use a lot of what other people have already done, but just kind of give you my spin on it, my take on it. Also, too, obviously from a draft prospect perspective, who I think can really help this team get to the next level. And again, I said it last week. I'll say it again now, and I'm going to say this until the fucking cows come home. This team, this is perfect. Watching a little ESPN this morning for the first time in a week and a half. They had said that the question was, should the Bills get, help Josh Allen more? And every single one of them, except for Greeny, to give him credit, said no, they got to get better on the defensive side of the ball. The offensive side of the ball is not. That's how you know, right? They have not a clue in the world what the hell they're talking about when it comes to this football team. They get the guys back that they had hurt. Milano's obviously an all-pro. That's a game-changing player right there. I don't know what to expect from Trey, but what I do know is I have Benford and Douglas already. So I'm not taking really much of a hit to begin with. What they do with Trey, we'll see. If he continues playing, right? He might retire. You might hang him up. I don't know. But if he does, we're fine in that spot. Would I love to have him back? Sure. If he can come back healthy, Achilles, it's tough. I don't know if he's going to start the year, if it's a pup thing. I don't really know. Ask Aaron Rodgers if the Dolphins' sex noises helped him or not. Who knows? Safety's obviously, a concern, right? If Hyde retires, Poyer's, clearly declining. Can still make a play from here, now and again, but that's a position that they are going to have to fill. Before they fill that, I would hope that they would, from a defensive standpoint, I would hope that they would address the defensive line because they have multiple free agents, which will then in turn, if they don't sign any of them, will create massive holes. Obviously, Daquan Jones, AJ Epinesa, Leonard Floyd lead from a name standpoint. I think they can get two of the three back. We'll see what Floyd, what his market is on the open market. If he gets a multi-year deal from somebody or if he elects to do this 1 year deal. I'd give him a 2-year deal with a second year as an option just to kind of give him a little bit of security. That's what I would do. But again, this entire off season has to be predicated upon making the wide receiver room as strong as it possibly can be. Like, if you said you can only address one position significantly, yeah, you're not going to, have your 53-man roster with 2 defensive tackles on it. I get it. But it needs to be receiver. And you know why. Because I laid it out for you last week. And if you didn't watch it last week, shame on you. I'm kidding. Kinda. They don't have a number 1 wide receiver right now on their roster. The general manager said so. But, again, for all the folks out there that think that I just sipped the Kool-Aid and, I agree with every single thing that this organization has done forever, you're wrong, because I literally tweeted at, I forgot who, but I said, you're wrong, Brandon. Like, no, he's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's not. If he was, you would have won. You would have beat Kansas City. You didn't. So, is it something where they're going to trade Diggs? I don't think so. It's been rumored that they're going to ask him to restructure and take a pay cut. Yeah, you should. Sorry, bud, but with the last 2 seasons and the lack of down-the-stretch performances and what you've given, isn't a $24 million receiver. It ain't. So, when you're the opposite, and certainly the receiver position is just that, you're overperforming your current salary, you're going to ask for a pay raise. I want more money. Like he did 2 years ago. And at that point in time, it was justified, given what he was as a football player. What he gave to this team from a receiving standpoint. He's not that player anymore. And every statistic shows it. So if you're going to argue with me, you're doing it based off of your own opinion on the player, not on what's on the field. And that's fine. We live in a great country that allows you to do that. But you're not going to convince me that this team doesn't have a gigantic problem at wide receiver moving forward right now, today, January 31st, 2024. It can change. First round receiver. And if not a second round receiver, then a third round receiver. If you can get 2 receivers within the top 99 picks, one of them is going to come in and instantly be, at worst, a 1A, 1B with Steph. Right? The next guy is going to be probably a 2B, 3A with himself and Shakir, whoever that player might be. You have an emerging star that everybody thinks in Dalton Kincaid that's going to help, that's only going to get better, that's only going to gain more and more trust, that's going to make more and more plays, and that will help. My hope is that this team doesn't think that Dalton Kincaid is the wide receiver 1 or B and just in a tight end body. I don't care receiver, tight end, pass catcher, right? That was the argument last year. But what I do care about is, and again, I like Kincaid a lot, and I think a lot of people do, but we need game-changing speed and game-changing ability down the field to help this offense. Explosive plays. You've heard it now for a week and a half, and you're going to hear that term all off season from this team and the people that cover it. This team needs explosive plays. And however they want to do it, I'm really open to anybody. There's really not a lot of guys from a draft standpoint that I could not get behind. So, but that has to be where you go. Because even if you were to restructure a Diggs contract to make it, whatever the case is, you move money around, you convert whatever, he's off this team after next year. He's not going to be here after next year, in my opinion. He ain't. So now, you're going to lose him after next year, who's your wide receiver 2 coming into this year, in my opinion. You're not going to have Gabe Davis, which, again, for argument's sake, the production and the perception that is Gabe Davis to a team, wide receiver 2, you're not going to have. Who knows what you do from a free agent standpoint with these other guys, these receiver 4s, 5s, and 6s, right? You're not going to have a Hardy. You're certainly not going to have Sherfield. And you're going to have a Khalil Shakir going into the last year of his rookie contract. So just from that standpoint, the room has to get better. The room has to get younger. The room has to get cheaper from a contractual standpoint, meaning rookie contracts. You want sustained success in this league if you can continue to hit on first and second, third round picks that can become starters either immediately or in year 2, like a Khalil Shakir, right? Shakir's going to have a big opportunity next year. And he's making $500,000. And if he can give them 50 catches, 60 catches from the slot, 6-7 touchdowns, and 700 yards, 800 yards, that's unbelievable, right? It's the same idea from when they take a Milano in the 5th round, or they get the Benfords from Villanova, or the Bernards from Baylor, then all of a sudden become these phenomenal football players for you. When you get that type of production, it allows the rest of the team, the guys that are paid the big bucks, to make those pills a little bit easier to swallow. Because it's not just A, B, and C, and if we don't got that, we're shot. We're done. Luckily, I believe we have a roster builder that knows that, obviously our general manager, and he's done a good job of that in his career as our general manager. He has found these guys that can become and produce. Gabe Davis is one of them. Again, you like the receiver, you don't, fine. But where he was picked and the production that he gave them, you would take that all day long. It's just you don't like the name Gabe Davis. And that's fine. I have my own criticisms too. What are we here? 33. So I want to go back past the half. Got a little roll there. So that's where we're at. Felt like I should, again, jump on here and just do a little bit of a recap of the football world. So I'll if I can do one here next week, I'll try. If I don't, for lack of time or whatnot, obviously go San Fran. My best case scenario coming into Sunday title or conference championship weekend. Conference title weekend, whatever you want to call it, was Kansas City beating Baltimore and San Fran beating Detroit. And then obviously San Fran finishing the job next week in Vegas. Go Niners, go Bills, and we'll catch you next week. God bless.